Welcome back to another edition of the Sports Block at the house. Joined here once again by R Squared, Ryan Magnuson, Ryan Grover. How are we doing tonight, gentlemen?
It's a happy Sunday, Petty. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Another day in quarantine.
That's right.
I hear you, Petty. I hear you. The
Well,
beard
look,
is still
man,
going strong. I still
it is.
respect it.
It's getting a little
I don't
hot
care what
outside,
Grover
though,
says.
man. It's getting a little
I
hot
don't care what
outside.
Grover
Petty,
says.
Petty, if you could do anything for our listeners, please grow this back.
It's coming
Please.
back. I see it.
I'm telling you, man, it's gonna look a little different here sometime soon. Either it's gonna go this way, or
Look,
it's gonna go this way. I might just
but
Macarena the whole
but the
thing. I'm
thing,
not really sure yet.
but the thing is, I don't hate the gray. I think the gray's great. I think this is an abomination.
Hey,
I'm just saying.
man, different means of style, man. Different strokes for different folks.
That Siler City's coming out hard for you right now.
Hey, man, you can take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy.
That's right.
Siler City's finest.
Well, look,
All right.
fellas, we got another fun show tonight. I think we caught up, with Nate Harris last week and had a lot of fun. And tonight we've got two other guys we're going to catch up with, go over some memories and some good times. And we got some fun times coming up. I'm looking forward to it.
That's right.
Let's do it. Yeah, so with that, let's get our guests on the hook. You're watching the Sports Block. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Sports Block. We are now joined by video coordinator for the Charlotte Hornets and former Middle Creeker Garrius Adams. We're also joined by Middle Creek legend David Kushner. Guys, how you doing tonight?
Doing good.
Yeah, doing really well. It's good to see everybody.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Let's start with you, Coach. Bring us up to speed on where you're at now and how this recent COVID situation has affected you.
So for me, I am doing breakfast with a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old every single morning, chasing a 5-year-old and 3-year-old around the rest of the day, and watching old movies and old basketball games like Len Bias beating UNC in overtime the other night. And that's pretty much my daily routine.
Nice.
Chasing those, man, that's worse than doing suicides, brother.
And Garrius, how about yourself? Tell us about your current role right now, both how it was, how you were operating before this situation, and how it's changed now.
My current role, like you said before, video coordinator for the Charlotte Hornets. Prior to COVID, we were very much in the gym, in the office. 12-hour days, just kind of grinding out different game plans and different things that we did to prep for our opponents. Very much hands-on. It was very much a lot to do. Now, since COVID, we've obviously been home for almost 2 months now, maybe a little over 2 months. Just kind of trying to communicate through the phone and through Zoom and different things like that. Going over different schemes and packages that we feel like we could improve on next year. A lot of those things is kind of just free fall. Like coaches just think of an idea and he just texts you and you just have to make it happen. So it's kind of hard, obviously, with connection and all those things. But it's been challenging and fun at the same time. Got a lot of time off, ready to get back to work though.
Yeah, and do you think do you think you're getting close to getting back to work? Does it feel like things are starting to shift on that end?
I think most people already know that they're going to start back playing in Orlando in Disney World. I think the first game will be July 31st. Some of those teams are already will start practicing. I think next week or the week after. The Charlotte Hornets, we didn't get um, invited to Orlando. We just missed the cut. We were in the 10th place of the East. So our season is officially over. But we've talked about kind of like what we want to do moving forward already. We haven't really we don't have a plan set in place yet, but we definitely going to be in the gym. Definitely going to be, doing a lot of things with the guys and stuff moving forward. So.
Yeah, Gary, so that was something I was going to ask about too. Obviously, with the 22 teams that are going down, kind of a very different situation than anybody's ever seen. And they're talking about running 6 games a day and whatnot to kind of get into the end of a regular season and a playoff season. But with the Hornets not going, I know there's been some talk. I think the owner of the Hawks has been mentioning about maybe doing like a mini training camp type of deal with multiple teams.
Mhm.
What things have you heard in terms of from the Hornets perspective and the other teams that didn't make the cut of what type of stuff you guys might try to do to kind of stay in shape and get back in the game form?
Yeah, I think it's very unique to one have all this time off, and then two, with the situation, we're trying to figure out how to accommodate all 30 teams. The NBA, I think they try to do the best they could, but 8 teams are left hanging. So now I think, like you said, those mini camp deals I think are still kind of in talks. I don't really know too much about that, but I think something like that is going to happen. Maybe later down the line, maybe October-ish, maybe September. I don't know, but I think it's definitely important that we get the guys back on the court, playing together. Um, but in terms of the timing of it, I'm not really sure. But I do feel like something like that is definitely going to happen. Um, it's definitely needed for sure.
Yeah, so let me ask you this too, kind of more of a personal perspective now. So your boss is the GOAT, man. So what's it like working for the GOAT?
Oh man, it's honestly hard to put into words sometimes because uh, he's like a shadow, and I mean that with like you hear whispers of like if he's gonna be in the gym, and just having that kind of aura or having that kind of feeling over a whole organization is incredible because he does bring the best out of everybody. I know I can remember one time where I think we were playing Indiana. It was one of like the first games of the season, maybe our sixth or seventh game, and we had a shoot around, um, hours before the game, and he walks in, and everybody just kind of like pauses, but then like super like gets back to work like super intensely. And it was my first time actually seeing him in person. So I think I was supposed to be like setting up a station or something like that, and I just stopped what I was doing. I went up, shook his hand. Like, I just had to like just speak to him. I went and just said what's up. Um, I didn't really have a conversation, but I just wanted to like let him know who I was. Um, so that was good. That was cool to kind of just be able to like say, "Oh, I shook hands with the goat." So it was a big deal for me.
Yeah, that's got to be crazy, man. But like everybody's like, "Oh, that's the legend. That's Michael Jordan. That's the best." But like, "Oh, shoot, that's the boss. I got to get back to work."
Right. So it was funny. It was definitely funny. I know a lot of players caught it too. So it's good times, man. He's obviously the GOAT with the Last Dance that came out. I think it's hard to question his superiority now because of him being at the top. Like he's just he makes the younger generation even younger. He understand how good he really was.
Yeah, that documentary has definitely shown a lot of people. I mean, I think a lot of people just know the younger generation know who Michael Jordan is. A chance to really see him play and do a lot of the things. And the documentary has definitely brought out a lot of stuff in terms of how incredible he actually was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to tag on to that greatest conversation, and probably, I mean, I would be a little biased here, but probably the best team that I've ever seen wear a Middle Creek jersey. But I'm going to start with Coach Kushner here. The team of 2007, 2008. What was your initial thoughts of that team? And obviously, we'll talk a little bit more as we go through the questions. Obviously, Garrius was part of that team. But I wanted to know what your initial thoughts were when they walked into the gym as a fresh varsity basketball team.
So not many people would have seen this, maybe a couple parents. We played the Christ School at the NC State team camp, and they had Mason Plumley, Miles Plumley, Lakeem Jackson, multiple Division I players. And we went toe for toe with them the whole entire game. And I knew that day, that was in June, that we had as good a chance as anybody to win a state championship. And then as the season started and we started the season 15-0, it just kind of reiterated what I expected going into the season.
And so, obviously, you know, the high-profile teams that you went against, you mentioned the Christ School, which always produces prospects and very good teams, but they're on the private sector of things. What made you kind of cement that, like, well, let me back up a little bit. What did you think your teams had that gave you that advantage to make you think that they could make a run ultimately in the playoffs?
I still think about this team, and you can go through the starting five, you can go 6, 7, 8, possibly 9. I liked our chances against anybody we were playing. You know, I think Kip Kelly is one of the best leaders I ever coached. Garrius Adams and Nelson Kirksey are possibly the two most talented players I ever coached. Brian Pruill was a coach's dream. He did all the dirty work. He would block shots, rebound. And then Tom Tankowitz, he could get hot at any time that year. He didn't have a great shooting year that year. But like in the big New Hanover game that we'll talk about a little later, you know, if he didn't shoot as well as he did in the first half, we wouldn't have been in the game.
Right, so you had that all-around team game, and do you feel like that's kind of a luck of the draw? I mean, I know you kind of made kind of a quick jab at yourself that, you know, if you didn't have the players, that you wouldn't be, you know, respected as a coach. Like, how much of that do you think comes from the talent versus implementing a system?
Well, I think I feel bad saying this, but Garrius would agree. If we would have run the offense that we ran Garrius' senior year, his junior year, we would have gone undefeated. Right?
Yeah, probably, most likely, yeah.
But I was always somebody that tried to adapt to my personnel. Like I would change our offensive system, defensive schemes, you know, depending on who we had. But that 2008 year was so special. You know, I don't know if Garrius remembers. I think in December, Garrius, Kip, Tom, and Coach Cunningham and myself, we drove down to New Hanover High School to watch New Hanover play Hoggard because we had a night off and I thought we had a very good chance to play them later in the year. And I wanted us all to see them because I knew they were very good, but I also knew we could beat them. And I wanted my guys to see that we can play with these guys. And I think seeing them, you know, getting that eye test, they were really big and really talented, but I don't think any of us left thinking, oh, we can't beat these guys.
Piggybacking off of that, you know, I feel like you guys have touched on some really big moments in Middle Creek history. I want to start with Garrius here, but I'm going to ask you both just for a few. What are your biggest memories of playing and coaching basketball at Middle Creek? We'll start with you, Garrius.
Oh man, it's a lot comes to mind. I think I think the biggest game obviously was the New Hanover game, hands down. Just from like Coach Kushner said, I don't think people understand that or knew the fact that we did our homework and went to watch New Hanover. Months before we even knew we would play them. I think that was really important. Now thinking about it now, just to be able to kind of see those guys and when they walked in the gym, to our gym later on that year, we definitely weren't scared. We were more motivated than anything. I think that was super important. I think as a whole, my career at Middle Creek, I'm just very proud of just being able to say that we make the playoffs for a majority of it. Yeah, I don't know if we made it my freshman year, but we made it all 3 of my last year. So that was super, super important to me as well. So.
And Coach, before we go to you, I think we've got a special moment queued up that we can relive here, right?
Sounds good to me.
The shot, forever known as the shot.
The shot and the celebration. That's for people that have never seen that and aren't familiar with Middle Creek, that they probably wouldn't even think that's a high school they're looking at first in terms of the sheer crowd size and excitement going on there. I'm going to throw it to you, Coach, now. And can you talk a little bit about that game and that moment in particular and what it did for the trajectory of that game?
That moment, I told Coach Petty this recently. I show the documentary that was filmed on every year to my newspaper one students to kind of keep the history alive, to educate them, to also be like, this is what it used to be like when we had big games here. And what that shot did at halftime compared to where we were at the end of the first quarter, without people knowing much about the game, we were down 26-11 in the second quarter. And we weren't playing scared. We just had a lot of things not go our way. And that shot gave us the momentum to have everything go our way after that. I think we completely believed we were going to win. And I think for the first time probably all year, they went into a halftime locker room like, we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I actually want to bring in Grover and Betty here now to this conversation because, Grover, I know you personally, I know you wanted to be in that crowd. I know you wanted to be one of the people jumping up and down, but you did get the privilege of calling that moment and ingraining it in history. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so from my perspective, everything that Kushner said, right? So we came out, for lack of a better terms, I don't want to step on any toes here, but I think we came out a little flat. And, they cooked us for the first quarter. And as you could see them building confidence through the second quarter, I think, a lot of things come to mind when I think of that shot, right? The student in me wants to be a part of the crowd when it hits, right? Another part of me is glad that I'm able to get this on audio, at least at that point. Brandon Aaron's documentary was separate from us. But when that shot went down, and obviously as the years go on, you kind of you glorify the past a little bit, right? But even in that moment, I don't want to minimize it at all. You felt going into halftime, you could beat anybody. And that's exactly what that shot ended up being and how the game ended up being in the long run.
Yeah, I think we got that audio clip, if not that clip, so you can actually hear the call.
As Garrius Adams has the half court, he throws it up, looking to go, and it goes in!
A three-pointer!
It goes in at halftime! Hey, that's how they're going into halftime.
Hey, they have all the momentum in the world right now.
Look,
a 5-point game.
Look at that crowd go.
They want to rush the court right now.
At half court.
It's only halftime. They want to rush the court right now.
By the way this crowd's going, you think we're leading.
So I
Darius,
think,
bring you back into this one too, and Grover and Nate Harris were talking about and talking about how everyone reacted. Take me into light after that shot goes down.
Yeah, I think, well, even to take it a step back, I wasn't in the game that possession before, and Kushner made a great call of just kind of getting me in the game, subbing me in, and they pressed, and I'm not sure, I can't remember who was taking the ball out at the time, but um, it was just a good coaching decision, to be honest. It was really a good coaching decision. Kind of put me in there. I've never made a half court shot in my life, but I mean prior to that, and it
I
just
thought
works.
about
I
that
don't know
too when you
exactly.
made that.
I don't know what he saw. To be honest. I've never hit a shot before.
You were
So,
due. You were due for
but
one.
right. So it was good confidence that he did put me back in. And when the shot went down, like everyone said, the momentum just shifted. I mean, we knew it from walking into the locker room and then walking back out. Like you could just feel it, and
Yeah.
yeah, and we just figured it out. So that shot was just as important as any aspect of that game. So
yeah, I agree. And, Coach Kushner, I know we've listened to that several times since it actually happened. And you can hear on the call there too. We saw the video clip earlier, but you can hear on the call how loud the crowd actually was. And I know, having been down on that sideline, coach, and what that does in terms of the energy level that brings to everybody on the floor. And, that gym has never looked like that compared to what it did that day. I'm pretty sure there were several fire codes broken in terms of the number of people that were in that gym that day, but the atmosphere was just electric, man. And, you talk about the start of the game, just a little more history that, New Hanover was defending state champion and they hadn't lost a game to any opponent in the state of North Carolina in 2 years. And, I think it says a lot when you talk about you guys were ready and you weren't scared. And most of the teams that had faced them prior had that intimidation factor between, all the Division I athletes going to college next year and the size of the guys down low and just kind of the reputation that they had previously. They weren't just beating teams; they were beating up teams. I kind of like it a little bit too. And Coach, I know you'll remember this is to the UNLV years when Larry Johnson was there and they went undefeated and they trumped, killed Duke in a national championship game. But then the next year, Duke wasn't afraid of them, and UNLV was undefeated and Duke beat them. And I think, I liken that game a lot to y'all's game against Hanover because y'all didn't back down. You weren't scared. And even though you were down, in that first quarter, you were still in it. And then when that shot went down, man, it was just like the thunder dropped. And it was game on at that point in time, man. It was just a great atmosphere. And I had so much fun just being there, watching that moment. And, and then for Nate and Grover to preserve that moment. There's such a historical moment in our sports history. To have it on the sports block, I think it's just awesome. It just gives me chills to hear it every time. Well, let me ask you guys this too, in terms of where we've been and where we are now. Garrius, I know obviously you left Middle Creek and then went on to play at Miami. And played for another great coach there in Jim Larinaga. And then Coach Kushner, obviously, you had to adapt and move on to the next team like we do each year. So, Garrius, I'll start with you first. Just kind of tell me what it was like, transitioning out of Middle Creek to then play in the ACC.
it was a big challenge. I mean, first off, it was huge. It was something I always dreamed of to play in the ACC. Just growing up in Carolina, like that was really important to me. So I took every year there super important, and so it was a lot going on in terms of like for me personally, with my injuries and from just going to school and all those things, like super tough atmosphere also to live in Miami as well. I
And the
think
coaching change.
coaching changes. I had a new strength coach every year. It was so much things that was happening behind the scenes in Miami, but I wouldn't trade it for a second. I always tell people that's like a second home to me, a place where I grew up and I had to become more independent and all those things outside of the court. But it was fun at the leagues. I mean, I came out as a winner, ACC champion, and so that transition from Middle Creek to Miami but still had its similarities in terms of the players that I was with. So like I have to, give a shout out to all my boys at Middle Creek that I played with. Like everyone that I played with through 2005 to 2009, I consider as family. And we built something there, and then I took that relationship as I had with all the guys in Middle Creek, and I brought that to Miami, and that was one of the reasons I went there. So I would say that's one of the biggest similarities and one of the most important things I took from transitioning from Middle Creek.
And then, Coach, for you, obviously, we had Nate Harris on last week, and we talked about, arguably the best running back that we had at Middle Creek, and then obviously Garrius, arguably the best basketball player we had at Middle Creek. What was your transition like then, now, when he left after his senior year and having to do it again, but now with a different group of guys?
It's really funny listening to what G just said about like what he brought to Miami, because what I tried to keep at Middle Creek is exactly what he just talked about. Is believing in each other, doing it for each other. We're a family. And the year after Garrius left, Stephen McAllister was really the only holdover, from the previous team. And we should not have been very good, and we were. And I think it's because of the foundation that Garrius and his teammates left. We expected to win, even though we didn't have as good of a team as a lot of teams would beat that year. They just expected to win, and then we kind of just carried that over for the next, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I think that was an important piece. The relationship that you built with your players. Not just with the teams that Garrius and Kip and that special group that we talked about that made that run, but for all of your years of coaching. You didn't just build basketball players; you built strong young men. And I think that's a testament to you and your program. And I think all of your players would come back and tell you that. So I know it's a different position you're in now, as I am, in terms of the transition to, watching our own kids grow up. But I know that you were awesome on the sidelines. So it was a joy to
Thank
watch
you very much.
you.
Yeah, that's definitely what I miss the most, is just those relationships with the kids, because there's nothing like that. I mean, even back when Garrius was there, I would play at Open Gym, and I probably was better in my late 20s because all these kids in high school were so much better than I ever was. And it was me trying to work to keep up with them. And so I learned their strengths being able to play. And I think I was a better coach because they put up with me, kind of slowing them down on the court.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to stay along those lines, I'll just keep us here for a second, because I kind of like the conversation of the transition aspect, right? So obviously, I'll shoot it to Coach Kushner first, but Garrius obviously chime in behind him. But how does we're talking basketball here, obviously, but how does a team transition? From high school to college is kind of the same thing. If college is a little bit more treacherous because you have transfer rules that come into effect, but how do you cope with a team that changes every year?
I think you have to be willing to change. And I think so many coaches get stuck in their system, stuck in their ways, I learned this and we're going to do this every single year. And I mean, there were coaches I coached against. I didn't have to scout them after 5 or 6 years because I knew they were going to be doing the same thing every year. And
Yeah.
there's one coach in particular that finally changed, and they became one of the best programs in the state for a couple of years because he changed. And I think, being able to understand the strengths that your team has and also understanding that some years you play fast, some years you play zone, some years you try to keep the game, kind of under 10 points every single quarter because that's the only way you have a chance to win. You just have to be flexible and you can't be so selfish that you're going to do it your way no matter what.
From more of a player's perspective, going through changes every year is hard, especially in high school because these aren't just teammates; these are friends that are leaving and going to play in different places. Um, so those are challenging. But like Kush said, like the atmosphere and the family unity that we had was still there. I still remember games my senior year. I mean, I feel like everyone graduated in the 08 class but me. Um, and I remember games in '09, and it was just me and Tom, and I would see teammates like Miles Costner in the stands, or Philip Conley, or Nelson Kersey, or Kip Kelly. Like all those guys will either come back for a game or a Christmas break or any of those things, and that mean everything to me because of those are the teammates I really spent my most time with. So um, just the camaraderie was super important, and I think that's if you build something like that, it's easier to maintain success because um, everyone knows what's demanded from teams. So it's super important. I think even as I take into my coaching career now, it's just something that I want to keep um, alive and remember and telling people about what I think works best.
Hey
And
guys, can I tell a quick story about Garrius' senior year?
oh, please do.
Embarrass him, please.
No, it's one of the coolest things. And if you weren't there that night, you wouldn't believe it actually happened. But we were at home. It was a Friday night. It was cold outside. And Garrius was on fire. Like, I think he had like 28 points through the third quarter, and we were up by, 25. That happened a lot that year. Either him or Tom or both of them would just go off and we would kill the team we were playing and it would just be over at the end. Well, the fans in the Creek Crazy section started chanting, "He's on fire." 5 seconds later, the fire alarm went off. We all had to evacuate the gym. No joke. That happened, right, G?
Yep.
Someone took
Yeah,
that real literal.
And I was going to say, Grover actually was the one that pulled the fire alarm. I guess you didn't
For
know
sure.
up until now. He thought it'd be funny.
During timeout.
What was the shot like after that? That's what I want to know.
Yeah,
well,
that's right.
as special as that 08 year was, we were, I still believe this, we were a missed foul call. Garrius went back door. He got fouled. They didn't call it. Enloe hit a three-pointer, and that completely changed. But with everything that went on in the playoffs, we would have won the state championship Garrius' senior year. I truly believe that because the Panther Creek team was not able to complete their season. And that was really our only team that gave us trouble. And
Are we talking the Ernest Ross Panther Creek?
that's the one. Yeah, they had some
Yeah.
suspensions and they got a bad deal, but like Garrius and Tom, people have no idea how many games, like in the first quarter, one of them would hit 5 3-pointers. Like just so we're playing Athens Drive in a play-in game, and Tom goes for 28, and Garrius had like 5 points like 9 assists, 8 rebounds, whatever. He didn't need to shoot. He barely shot. And Clayton was there watching us. And that's who we played in the first round of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And Garrius had like 26 points in the first half against Clayton because they didn't think he could shoot the ball. He had 4 threes in the first quarter.
They went
Who's
boxing.
Clayton? Who's Clayton? Just for the crowd, just for the audience.
The Clayton Comets from the next county over.
I'm just making sure. You said Clayton. I'm like, is that her first name?
High school, bro. Clayton High School.
Yeah.
All right, I get it.
They went boxing one on Tom and we're like, okay, we know you're going ACC, but good luck beating us. Well, he beat him by himself in the first half. So
That's hilarious.
Like my boss would say, I took that very personal.
That's right.
Yeah,
and that is something about Garrius. Like, I can probably count on one hand how many times he smiled in basketball games, because much like his boss now, he would find motivation in any way possible. Well, whether it was, somebody that was getting recruited at a better school than he was at the time, or somebody that said something to him or whatever, he wouldn't complain about it. He was just going to beat him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Silent assassin, man. You never. Garrius was so quiet, man. High school, he never said anything, but he just go out there and kill you on the court, man.
I was just gonna say, I honestly don't know why my demeanor was that way, because everyone I was around was super loud. Like all my teammates, the loudest people ever. But that's just how I was. I just like Kush said, I would find ways to just kind of find different things to just get me up for the games. I mean, it would always be something though. That's the most interesting thing about basketball. Like, any game we play, any team, there was always something. It could be super small. It could be someone stepping on your foot annoyingly. Like we go back to the New Hanover game. I had a guy named Kevin Parham who was guarding me the whole game. And if I remember watching that game, I remember, like, obviously the things that were happening in the game. Like, he would do like certain things. He would step on my foot, or he would like push me off balance, or like there was a couple times like where he like tried to knee me, like and the ball would be on. Like, it'll be a dead ball, and he'll just like knee me, or like small stuff like that. I'll never forget that, and that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to kill.
He was your Matt Barnes.
Yes, he was definitely my Matt Barnes. Definitely.
So I want to rewind it a little bit here and go back to, we did a lot of talking about crowds here. We talked about the New Hanover crowd. Garrius, we talked about Miami, and we know that you played in some of the most hostile stadiums in the country. One thing we've asked all our guests so far, and last week Nate Harris gave us a very honest answer to this question. We're talking about where we are right now, and talking about having possibly no fans in the stands for a lot of sports. So I want to get both your guys' perspective here. We'll start with Garrius from the player's perspective. What do you think that's going to be like?
I think it's going to be challenging for some players. I think some players will adapt. And I'm just speaking from NBA terms right now, but I think some guys will be fine. I think some guys will enjoy it. I think some guys will kind of relish it because of there's very few, but there's plenty of NBA players, especially defensive players, that talk a lot on defense, and it's super important. And I think that aspect is obviously going to be very highlighted. I think from some players who are just energy guys, I think they're gonna want to, have the fans there, but obviously with what's going on, it's not gonna be able to happen. But I think you're just gonna get, push and pull. I think if you're a coach, I mean, you're happy that your team will be able to hear you at all times, but at the same time, like you want them to have that second push of energy that comes through the fans. I think that's super important too. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with everything.
And Coach Kushner, I feel like the coaches might be under the magnifying glass a little bit more in a format like this because we're going to be hearing everything these coaches are saying. Do you think that's the case?
I think the best coaches don't have to say a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Gary's brought up a really good point. The best defensive teams are going to be even better because they're going to be able to hear each other really well. The home court advantage doesn't mean anything. And so the teams that are technically sound and are, the best prepared by their coaches, by their coaching staff, I think save for, all NBA players doing what all NBA players do, I think it's going to kind of even out the field if, one team has a better coaching staff and the other team's a little more talented. I think it's going to make it a little bit harder for that more talented team than if they had home court advantage.
Garrius, let me ask you this now, since you've had some really influential coaches during your time, obviously with Coach Kushner in high school, and Coach Larinaga at Miami, and different coaches you've had throughout the years. Now, as with the Hornets, what is your goal? What's your plan now? Where do you want to go?
I think if you would have asked me in high school, I would have said I would not want to be a coach. But it's changed. My perspective has changed about it. I definitely want to be a coach and coach at the highest level. And I think that's just honestly from having good coaches. That's just having those relationships with those guys. Kind of to tell you what to look out for or what to expect. I think the things I've learned along the way from high school up, every coach I've had has been a winner, in different aspects. So I think taking those things are super important. I've been taking those things with me, learning every day about different things that would make me a better coach or a better video coordinator at the time. I'm just trying to do all the things I can, the best I can. So.
For those that might not know, I guess kind of the role of the video coordinator, to kind of walk me through what is your day, your week like?
It's pretty busy. So, I would say, I'm usually first one in the gym. That's usually maybe 6:30, 7 a.m. I'm there. I'll probably go over. It'll probably be easier to go over a game day than a regular day, but so we'll have guys come in. Our system is a little different than others. We'll have a few guys come in from like 8 to 10, and they'll get like 30 minutes of individual skill work, and we'll help them through that. And then at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m., whatever the guys finish up, most guys go home. Most of the coaches stay. We'll go over game plans and what we do with our opponent or even with ourselves. And then that will be usually our whole afternoon. We'll either order lunch or go get something really quick. We'll come back. Guys usually show up to the gym probably 2 o'clock for a 7 o'clock tip off. And then we'll have a shoot around 3:30 or 4 o'clock, a couple hours before the game. We'll go over all our defenses, our offenses. We'll run over our plays. I'm usually in the dummy offense, running over whoever the key guy is of that game, or James Harden or Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, whoever it is. Like we're kind of like running those.
Yeah, whoever it is.
Right. So
Yeah,
we're
somebody's on
running
James
those guys.
Harden.
Yeah, it was just funny to me that you said James Harden first, and you're like, yeah, if we're prepping for James or somebody else like that, or
Right. So I mean, you just have to fill the role, right?
right.
And we we go over that, and then we go through our pregame routines. Guys have certain things they do on the court or off the court, 2 hours before the game, and then tip off and game time, and then after the game, we'll stay, and I'm usually in charge of cutting the film and making sure the coaches have the game after everything is over, and then we're probably getting out around 11 o'clock midnight. Do it all over again.
So Garrius, obviously now, spent time as a player in high school and in college, and now, coaching video coordinator in NBA. Is NBA kind of the level that you'd like to stay at, or maybe college, or what area of coaching are you looking to pursue?
I think I definitely want to stay in the NBA. As of right now, at least, I think I've found a good challenge, and definitely found some niches that I think are helping me along the way. I've talked to, or I try at least to try to talk to all of our assistant coaches every day. We have some really good coaches who've been in the NBA for a long time, and I just asked them about how long and how they end up staying in the NBA as long as they have, and just trying to pick little things from different coaches and even the players. I try to talk to a lot of the veteran guys and ask them, you know, what weaknesses did they see in the coaches that they have. Even the coach that we have now, JB. I mean, he's great. Um, but what strengths does he have, and try to take those along with me and my career. So I know you can use those at any level, but I think the NBA is just something that I've always aspired to play in, and to be able to coach in is even greater, if anything, because I'm sure. I don't know if Kushner saw me as a coach or an NBA coach, or anything.
That was actually be my follow-up question to Coach Kushner is, obviously having coached this guy, did you ever see Garrius taking on a coaching role?
No. His first experience at NC State team camp going into his freshman year, he won a game at the buzzer, and I don't even think he's like clapped, smiled, said anything. And like that was him. He has so many game-winning shots, and he never like came into the locker room like hooping and hollering about himself, or he would yell his senior year, especially, and his junior year. He would, if he was really if he was angry, he might get on somebody. But for the most part, he was very attentive. But I just thought he was being attentive so he knew what our plan was, not so he could, be kind of putting this away to use in the future.
I agree with
And
that.
I guess I have to wrap this up because obviously when you have somebody that's worked in the Laker locker room, you got to ask this question, and definitely I want to extend this question in a different way. So what I'll do is, Garrius, I'll ask you your question, and Kushner, I'll follow up with you as well. But Garrius, you got to tell me a Kobe story. You got to do it. It has to happen before we get out of here. You have to tell me a Kobe story. And Kush, as you have players that have kind of gone through the ringer, I mean, Garrius, and you've had other players go through college as well. Like, how do you pull from those experiences and kind of gain from those? Like, I'm sure I haven't been a coach at a high school level, but I'm sure seeing your players kind of grow up in a literal sense and kind of meet their stars or one of them, like that kind of gives you something as well. So Garrius, if you could go first, and Kushner, please, after him as well.
So meeting Kobe, I remember it was one of my earlier days of working with the Lakers, and you could hear whispers around the gym. So the way the gym is actually set up, the court is kind of inside of an office, essentially. And so upstairs, you can see, different people moving around, and it was very normal for people to go from one end to the other end. This day, everyone was literally going crazy, and so I think I think it was maybe a little bit before practice started. Some guys were kind of getting taped and things like that. And we have these black curtains on the Laker in the practice facility where there's like glass and there's black curtains so nobody can see behind. They started closing the curtains, and I've been hearing that he was going to be there, and I'm like, you're not closing the curtains on me today. I'm sorry. I like go around the corner, and there he was. He was actually standing with our GM Rob Pelinka, and they were just talking. He ended up coming into practice, and he sat and watched. Again, like I didn't really have a conversation with him, but I did, shake his hand and tell him who I was, and told him how he was my favorite player, and that was super important to me. When you get those times, I even did it with Magic Johnson. Just you see these guys and you've seen them in different elements and areas, and you just have to just tell them how you feel. So that was one of the better days I've ever had working with the Lakers. Just meeting him and seeing him, and wishing I got to talk to him more. But it was great.
I mean, I forgot about Magic, but I can't believe
How you forget
the
about
amount of
Magic?
look, Kobe. All right, when you have to kind of categorize Laker greats in your brain, like I mean, obviously Kareem might be number one, but Kobe might be number one too. Like,
Kobe's
and then
number
after
one.
that, it's
Kobe's still number one.
how are you going to
Kobe's
say
number
Kobe after? How are you going to say
Kobe's
number
number one.
one over?
Kobe's
Let
number
me
one.
finish. Let
Kobe's
me
still number
finish.
I saw
Magic
all three
was-
of them play in their prime. Kobe's number one.
Magic would say Kobe's
All right.
number one.
Absolutely.
All right. When number 3 says number 2 is the best, I'll agree with that too.
Look, when you go down the list, Jordan is the overall number one. And then there's the argument between Kobe and LeBron. Mine is Kobe is number 2.
No statement. Kushner, can you kind of talk about kind of what I mentioned before, having players kind of move on and how you kind of draw from that?
Yeah, I talked to Garrius recently, and I was talking about how I can't even go to basketball games anymore because he spoiled me so much. I mean, I watched him cut down the nets in Greensboro for the ACC championship. Barry Larkin was sitting in the seat in front of me. And that's how I watched basketball for, 5 years Garrius was at Miami. I went to 4 different ACC tournaments. I got to go to the hotel to hang out with him. I got to meet a bunch of players. His senior year, Lisa and I took a vacation down to Miami, and we got to watch him coach a little kids camp. Like they had, like little hurricane ballers there, and LeBron's son was playing, and like Carlos Boozer's kids, and the Miami football coaches. I just have so many awesome memories. I've had talks with like Roy Williams. I've had every school in our gym except for Duke and Carolina. Every state school. I mean, I grew up in a 3 traffic light town, amazed at people that got to do what Garrius has done, and I got to kind of rub shoulders because of, so many of my former players, but especially because of Garrius.
Yeah, and you mentioned kind of off air. Did you have a quick story about number 24?
Yeah, so Garrius got thrown onto the varsity team his freshman year because we weren't very good, and he was very good, and so he didn't really have a jersey, so he had like a couple different numbers. But going into his sophomore year, I ordered new uniforms, and I made sure he wore number 24 home and away. And he's like, "Why do I want to wear number 24?" I was like, "Well, it was my high school number, and I think it'll be really good for you." And the next year, Kobe Bryant changed his number from 8 to 24. And I would joke with G. I was like, "See, he wants to be like you."
That's right.
I remember that now. Yeah, I definitely remember that.
You got to give props where it's due, you know.
Right.
And now number 20. I was going to say 24 has only been worn by Garrius and Quentin Ray. That's a very special number in Middle Creek.
Well, guys,
maybe
with that,
retire.
Retire that.
I agree.
That's right.
Talk to Cunningham.
Retire 24.
Hey, we know a guy named Robbie Ray. We can get it done.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Well, guys, with that, I want to keep you guys on time. Very much thankful for you guys' time. I mean, honestly, it's always a pleasure to bring in former Mustangs and kind of talk about where they've been, and it's been awesome. Thank you to Garrius Adams and Coach Kushner. You guys are listening to the Sports Block and watching the Sports Block. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Sports Block. Before we wrap things up here and talk about the episode, I do want to provoke a fight here because I think it's pretty funny. But Grover, I do want you to make a statement on Petty's list here. I know you've got feelings. I know he's placing. I mean, Petty, where does LeBron go on the list for you? And Grover, why is it wrong?
All right. I'll let Petty go first, but I didn't want to have this fight.
Here's the deal. All right, so Michael Jordan is number one. There's no argument there. There is no argument there. The argument, obviously, is for number two. And there's both sides of the spectrum. There's the Kobe spectrum, and there's the LeBron spectrum. To me, if you look at overall the ability of that individual and what they accomplished, Kobe's the guy. Now, in terms of LeBron, I think he's probably the most freakish athlete we've ever seen play basketball in terms of a man of his size and stature and what he can do. But in terms of innate basketball abilities, scoring the basketball, shooting the basketball, winning championships, and having to have done it in a much tougher conference in the Western Conference than what LeBron had to do. By far, Kobe's the guy, and you can say all the things LeBron has done, and that's great. But, to me, it's a very big difference between the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. And the road to get to a championship is much easier in the East than it is in the West. And the types of caliber teams that he had to beat, to get there, and lost. Let's add that to the mix in terms of the number of championships that LeBron lost. That's not to take anything away from the guy. He's a phenomenal basketball player. One of the best. But Jordan's one, Kobe's two.
All right, so I will say two things. One, I'm not going to come out as aggressive as I think you had hoped, Magnuson, because I have grown weary of trying to compare players from different eras. I think there's a lot to say about Jordan in his prime versus Michael Jordan in his prime, Jordan in his prime and LeBron in his prime. Both grew up in different eras. Both required, obviously, one kind of bled into another. So, take with it what you will. But so the first thing I'll say is I have shied away from the GOAT conversation. I think there's too many variables to have a GOAT conversation. If you want to talk about multiple players that played in the same era, so I think a very comparable side by side would a much more valid conversation would be Kevin Westbrook or Stephen Curry. They both grew up in the same era of basketball. They're different players. They play different positions, so you can kind of take with it what you will. Jordan and LeBron played up in totally different eras in that it's very hard to take the different variables. You want to take the stats.
Not hard at all to take the different variables. Look at what Michael Jordan did on the basketball court to compare it with LeBron James. There's no variable. Variable.
I wasn't trying to have this fight, but if you want to have this fight,
because it's not a fight. There's no other answer. If you're trying to tell me that LeBron is better than Michael Jordan, then you definitely have some. We need to discuss other problems you're having in your life.
And look at the main people that make this argument. They're all 40-year-old men or women.
Look,
it's an equal opportunity situation.
But no, I'm a student of the game. Okay, I know about players before I was born and players that I've watched. Okay, there's a difference in just saying, "Oh, this was the greatest person I ever saw," versus knowing the history of the game. Okay, so you have to talk about guys like Oscar Robertson that I never actually saw play a game, that I've only read about highlights. So if you're going to put the argument in there that it's just because I saw him play, you're going to lose that argument because
I won't. Statistics still make them even, Petty. You can't tell me
they don't.
A person that can play all 5 positions on the court is a better player than Jordan, or isn't a better player than Jordan.
It's not about if anybody can play center versus their size. It's about what that individual does to the game of basketball.
Can Jordan?
Sure, Jordan could. Jordan could play any position he wanted to play. Okay? Because he could take anybody to the rack at any point in time. He could dominate anybody. The amount of dominating games that man had far overshadowed any dominance that LeBron ever had in terms of a game. He could score at any point at a time that he wanted to. And don't get me started on the jump shot, because LeBron still doesn't have a jump shot.
That's not true. That's not true. In his early years, it was true. It's not true now.
It's better. But if you want to compare him to a shooter, you can put Jordan up there with great shooters. You can't put LeBron up there with great shooters.
Well, now if we're having a shooting conversation, you're putting a 2 up against a stretch 3 and saying he has a better shot. Of course he should. He's a small player and should have a better shot.
Right, because he's one of the better basketball players. You tell me basketball players shouldn't be able to shoot the basketball? Okay. Just because you can drive to the hole because you're big and strong, great, So then you want to compare LeBron to Shaquille O'Neal, since you're just talking about big guys down low that can play center? Is that what you want to do?
But I'm not. But that's not who LeBron is. He's a 6'9", 260 behemoth. He can play down. He can bang low with a 4 or even look. I'd love to see LeBron play against Shaquille. Would Shaquille probably win more times than not? Yes.
Yes, Shaquille would dominate him down low.
I know that, but he has the body that he could be down low. And then at the same time, he has the same lateral quickness to be matched up against a 1 or a 2. Jordan doesn't have those flex options.
I told you he was probably the most freakish athlete we've ever seen to play basketball because of his versatility. But in terms of the best basketball player, in terms of what they brought to the game, what they brought to the team, and what they achieved both individually and team-wise, there's no comparison.
I mean, I don't believe that. How about this? This is where our conversation will end. Do you think Jordan would win in a one-on-one game with LeBron?
If you put them both in their prime, absolutely.
That's just not true. So, anyways, I'll move on. So, guys,
it's okay to not know, man, but it's not okay to not understand.
Look, I was not old, but I did see Jordan play. Yes, it was in the tail end of his second three-peat, and as much as you want to put into winning championships, which is however valid that is, you win championships, you're the best. I get that point. But you can't convince me that body for body, LeBron isn't a better player than Jordan. And then with that, I will move on. Yes, Petty?
It's not about the size of the body. It's about what the individual does and brings to the table. Okay, you can talk about how big he is all you want to. And I told you, like I said, he's a freakish athlete. For a guy to be that size, to be able to pass like he's able to pass, and to do the things he does is remarkable. He's a freak of nature, but he's not Michael Jordan.
All right, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and hit pause on this discussion because I can't guarantee that I might may or may not try and provoke it again in the future. But for now, we're going to hit pause on it. Hit the comment section up if you're watching and have a strong opinion like the other two here. If you think LeBron or Jordan is the GOAT, let us know. Also, be sure to smash the like and subscribe button to continue to keep up with all our content here. We're really trying to push Middle Creek athletics to the world, so we appreciate your help with that. We thank both of our guests tonight, Garrius Adams, David Kushner. You've been watching the Sports Block. Tune in next time.